Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Max Danielsen Show. I'm your host, Max Danielsen, and for this broadcast, there's only going to be me today. We have no scheduled guests for today, but not to fret. Show must always go on, and with it being kind of a week in sports, in professional sports, and collegiate sports, not much really to talk about. So today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter than usual. We actually only have one commercial break during the entire bit. So yeah, that just gives you how much news there is this week. And that's also kind of like the year or the time frame that we're in this year, where MLB is just about to get started. The NFL is over now. The NHL and NBA are kind of in mid-season. We just got past the trade deadline. We do have the XFL, but besides opening weekend, not much happening there. But there's still a lot happening. Even though it might not be a lot, there's still something always happening in the sports world. And we'll start out with Major League Baseball being the Houston Astros and this whole cheating scandal that is now extended into spring training. Multiple players, multiple fans have came out and just basically bashed the Astros. Particularly, I know one instance they posted on Twitter where some fan came up, banged on a trash can, and then ran away, even though he probably shouldn't have ran away because there's not much you could do. And then players like LeBron James, I know Mike Clevenger was big on it, Trevor Bauer, Phil Hughes, a lot of those guys have voiced their opinions and really are showing why the Astros deserves some type of, consequence for this whole thing. The biggest problem with me in this whole scandal because of the fact that Rob Manfred has not given any single thing, or he hasn't done anything to the players at all who were heavily involved in it. AJ Hinch kind of turned his cheek and said, I didn't know about it. Same thing, costed him, the general manager, their jobs. And then the players get no repercussions for that. And then, you're probably going to have pitchers that are throwing at them this year. There's an over-under thing of 83.5 hitters hit, or Astros hitters hit this year by getting plunked. And even Rob Manfred has stated that those pitchers that do that will be getting repercussions, which blows my mind first and foremost, because his argument was that the public shaming was the biggest part. You really think that the Astros give a crap about, being publicly shamed? No, they don't care. They don't care. And do I feel a little bit for Astros fans? Kind of. Yes, okay? I understand that, and no one is not saying that they're not a power team, that they are not one of the best teams in baseball, because they are. They still are one of the best teams in baseball. But at the same time, how they got to that, the pinnacle of baseball, it may not have been where in other instances where they were showing up, but, who's to say that it still didn't happen? Because if you think about it, a playoff atmosphere like World Series, you're not going to be able to hear a trash can banging, and that's where that whole buzzer thing comes in. But, I think the players should be able to take repercussions for it. I think players should be able to throw at them, and that's kind of like showing their repercussions. And I know I'm saying repercussions a lot. But point blank, the Astros players should be getting some form of punishment for doing that. A lot of people have been comparing it to, well, what's worse, the steroid era or, the cheating era. And honestly, the steroid era, it made the game interesting, right? And even though, yes, was it wrong? Of course it was. But it's not to take away from, the athleticism and the skill that all those players had, like Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, all those guys, Jose Canseco. All those guys still have power. They still have an amazing bat. And I know a lot of people, have so much hate towards Barry Bonds, but at the same time, Barry Bonds was one of the greatest hitters to ever play the game. And that's, if he didn't take steroids, he'd still be one of the greatest. You could take steroids all you want, but go up there facing a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, you're probably not going to touch it. The average person won't, right? So that, I feel like it was an advantage, but it didn't hurt the game versus the cheating era where it's hurting the integrity of the game, you know? When a player knows what the hell is coming up at the plate, what's the point, you know? I remember there was a video I was watching. They were breaking it down in like an MLB stats video featuring John Boy Media. If you have not watched John Boy Media, highly recommend to go check him out. He breaks down a ton of stuff, and honestly, I love his content. But he was showing that, you know, the pitchers were picking up that they're, you know, finding those signs, especially when banging the trash cans. And they had to keep changing them. Some pitchers knew that they were figuring out the signs, but at the same time, you know, there's not much you could do, you know. What are you going to say? You know, you really can't say anything, you know, oh, they're picking up signs, knowing the MLB, and especially the fact of the repercussions that they took against the Astros, I'll start saying punishment. How about that? The punishments they gave towards the Astros, it only involved the upper people, and even the fact, you know, yes, should it be doing that? But if anything, it should be the players, because how it started was that one player was not hitting well at the plate, and then one coach was trying to help him out, and they both wanted to figure out a solution, and that was their solution. So how this all plays out for the season will be very, very interesting. Frankly, I think it's going to be over 83.5 hitters hit this year. I could definitely see it, unless Rob Manfred decides to give some form of punishment. And knowing him, he's one of the laziest commissioners that I've ever seen. And frankly, he probably needs to go here soon. He really does. But we are going to go aside from that and just kind of go into some more MLB news. The Milwaukee Brewers signed Brock Holt to a contract, and last season, hit 7 home runs. He had a .297 batting average and a .369 on-base percentage. I mean, for the Brewers, they're right now just stacking up that middle infield. You know, Brock Holt, everyone knows the Twitter videos of him and his son, and especially kind of the impact he had on the Red Sox. But for the Brewers to have this type of veteran leadership, you know, that's going to really help them, especially with the young guys like Hura, and I can never remember the guy's name, but he's in AAA, I think. I want to say he's in AAA. And as well, Orlando Arcia. I think that's his first name, but I know it's Arcia. Anyways, not the point. But what I'm getting at is that Brock Holt is going to bring in a lot of leadership that this team needs, and frankly, build an even better and more consistent middle piece for the infield. So a pretty good signing on that part. Another signing that happened just today was that the Chicago White Sox extended Aaron Bummer to a 5-year, $60 million contract. This is the largest deal for a non-closer before arbitration to this date. And last year for Bummer, he had a pretty good year, kind of a breakout year, only being 26 years old. He had a 2.13 ERA in 67.2 innings pitched. And the one thing I really like about the White Sox is, you know, what they have in their arsenal. They have a lot of young talent coming up. For example, Yoan Moncada, or actually, no, he got traded, didn't he? Wow, am I really having to look this up? I am. I got to make sure. I don't think he got... Yeah, no, he's still there. Okay, just had to make sure there. Michael Kopech, you know, that's another big guy that they have there. Jose Abreu, who they just re-signed this year, I believe. They have a really, really young team, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and especially for their bullpen. That's something big they need, and pitching was their biggest worry in the free agency, and they kind of done a decent job. They did miss out on Zach Wheeler, But then again, that was kind of the big name guy besides Garrett Cole for pitching. And then finally, or really second to final, being Tony Fernandez passing away this past week from multiple health issues, including a stroke. And it's really, really sad, especially, he was a big part of Major League Baseball. Extremely good for the Expos, for what I heard. Just kind of breaking down his career, he finished with a .288 batting average. He had 2,276 hits and was a 5-time All-Star in the league. It really does stink, especially losing these people who were so big to Major League Baseball. And I know that Tony Fernandez was a big part for a lot of people growing up. A lot of people that I personally remember. Or sorry, no. He was not on the Expos. It's the Blue Jays. I totally messed up my team there. He died, though, only at the age of 57, which is really, really sad. His career spanned from 1983 to 2001. Played 3 separate stints with the Blue Jays and was a part of that 1993 World Series team, of course, with that Joe Carter walk-off there. But yeah, it definitely stinks to see that this guy, passes away. He was a big name for Major League Baseball. A really good infielder, and he will be very, very dearly missed. We wish for Mr. Tony Hernandez to rest in peace. And then finally, for Major League Baseball, spring training has started up. It'll be interesting kind of to see how it all plays out, especially with the fact how many teams will play out. I know Rangers will be a fun one to watch, see how they've gotten better with their pitching and everything. The Twins will be fun to watch, adding Josh Donaldson to their lineup and especially some more pitching. And just teams here and there that have just simply gotten better over the offseason. So we'll have to see how that works out. We're going to move on here to NBA basketball. This past weekend was the All-Star game. And honestly, I want to say this is probably been one of my favorite All-Star games in prior years. It just simply felt different. The players felt different. They were more competitive this year. And I just really, really liked the idea that they brought to the table where the fourth quarter you played at 24. I think that was a great idea, especially for both teams. One team, I believe it was LeBron's team, wearing 2, and then Giannis's team wearing 24. But before we get into the actual game, there was the Saturday night events that happened. Bam Adebayo won the skills challenge. Of course, Bam Adebayo is becoming one of the really, really solid forwards in the game, especially for the Heat. And, I mean, you talk about a young team. The Heat have a very, very young team, and it's going to be fun to watch them in the future, especially how they develop. Maybe they can get back to where they were back in the 2006 days, even though Mavericks should have won that championship, or, their LeBron days. Who knows? But otherwise, I mean, it's just a fun team to watch. Tyler Herro, Kendrick Nunn. I think it's David Covington. That's the new rookie that was, I want to say, in the Rising Stars Challenge. He's done pretty well. I mean, they just got a lot of really, really good pieces. Jimmy Butler. I mean, you just take a look at their lineup, and you have a very, very, very solid team there. For the three-point contest, Buddy Hield won that. Hield, one of the better three-point shooters in the league, maybe going down as one of the better ones this season. And even so, for a Kings team who's kind of on the verge of a bubble team where they may or may not get into playoffs, we'll just have to see how that works out. I mean, Buddy Hield has been a major piece in media even during his time at Oklahoma, and really has spanned into the NBA, being a very, very lethal three-point shooter and on a very, very young team. Again, I mean, same thing there with the Heat there. Both very, very young teams. You got Marvin Bagley on your team, De'Aaron Fox, of course, Buddy Hield, and a couple other guys that are definitely going to be on the rise within a couple years. Will they be competing anytime soon for a title? Probably not. Probably not. But they are still going to be a very fun team to watch. Going on to the dunk contest. Now, here's the thing about the dunk contest this year is that a lot of people, including myself, believe that Aaron Gordon was snubbed from winning the slam dunk competition. And who won that slam dunk competition was Derrick Jones Jr. He's on the Miami Heat too. Jeez, all these young teams. I actually got to meet Derrick Jones Jr. when he was in the G League. I got an interview with him, and I was trying to find it for today, but I could not find it, which really stinks because that interview we were talking about when he was in the dunk contest a couple years ago. Definitely stinks that I lost that interview because that would have been a great one to play today, but oh well. You live and you learn. Next time, need to make sure to save it. But honestly, Aaron Gordon has been snubbed so many times, and the dunks that he does, I don't get how he doesn't win it. I really don't get it. It just surprises me, And even so, afterwards, and I don't blame him, he said he's not doing it again. I don't blame him for that. He was snubbed from it, and he shouldn't go back. Now, do I think he will go back eventually? Probably, yes. He said he wasn't going to do it the first time, and then he did, and then now he's back here. So we'll have to see how that works. Now, going into the All-Star game entirely, it was a pretty good game, actually. Team LeBron won against Team Giannis by the score 157-155. Kawhi Leonard won the newly named Kobe Bryant MVP award. That's another way that, the NBA has tried to cement Kobe's legacy, and I really think that was a great idea. This year's NBA All-Star Game was actually extremely, extremely good. Many players said they really enjoyed it. It felt like Kobe was there with them. They were playing for something even more. It was more competitive, and I just like that idea of it, and I think that, renaming it to the Kobe Bryant Award means a lot versus just, some piece of, just a little trophy you get that just has the NBA logo on it. You could put that in your mantle, or put it on your mantle, but now it has significant meaning to it. And I think that also goes into for players, a lot of them knowing Kobe, that does mean a lot to them. But we are going to move on to some other news in the NBA. Reggie Jackson was bought out by the Pistons and signed with the Los Angeles Clippers. I mean, this team that they're playing with here, Reggie Jackson, Pat Beverly, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. I mean, the list goes on and on. They got a solid squad. They really do have a solid squad. And it'll be interesting to see, come playoff time. I could see a Western Conference Finals of it being the Lakers and the Clippers. But I think Reggie Jackson's going to fit really, really well, especially with Kawhi and Paul George. And even so, then you bring Pat Beverly off the bench as your sixth man, get a spark plug off the bench offensively, and be able to maintain the defensive standpoint because we know Pat Beverly, he's one of the better defensive players in the league. Moving on here, Kyrie Irving, this is some news from the Brooklyn Nets that he will be out for the rest of the season after a shoulder injury. And starting out in the offseason, they got the big three there, DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. DeAndre Jordan has been having an okay year. Not really the greatest. Let me try to put up or get his numbers up, actually. Let's see how he is doing. This season, he has been averaging 8.2 points per game in 21.6 minutes. He has been grabbing 10 rebounds a game and dishing out 2 assists per game. So not a bad year for DeAndre Jordan. Of course, Kevin Durant has been out with an injury. What happened to him back in the finals last year. And then Kyrie had a shoulder injury, had to get shoulder surgery. So he's going to be out for the rest of the year. So whenever KD and Kyrie get back, this team could be very, very, very good to watch, especially having Spencer Dinwiddie still on the team. It's going to be a fun team to watch, so I'm very, very excited for next year. But going on to the other side of who I believe is going to be in the Western Conference Finals, being the Los Angeles Lakers, they signed Markieff Morris, which really adds to their depth. And they had to get rid of someone, so they decided to waive DeMarcus Cousins after his ACL tear earlier this year. And which really stinks is the career that DeMarcus Cousins is now in at this point. He was probably one of the better centers, if not the best center at one point in the league. And just injuries have taken a toll on his body and has really put him down to the very, very bottom of it all. And now the Lakers have to get rid of him. So, Markieff Morris is going to bring in, that spark plug. Sorry about that. For you off the bench that you do need. But at the same time, a prime Boogie is freaking amazing. He is one of the best centers to ever play, in my opinion. A prime Boogie is one of the best centers to play. And it does stink that his career has just gone off the wheel, especially with his injuries. So hopefully he can rebound his career. We'll have to see about that. But for right now, just the Lakers just adding on to their rotation and just bringing in all the firepower for this postseason for a big postseason push. So we are going to take a very, very quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to end it off with some NFL, a little bit of college basketball, and then some NHL. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back. The Max Danielsen Show is proud to announce Gage's Granite as an official sponsor for the Saturday podcast. Gage's Granite is a family-run company operating nearby in the Dallas Metroplex. They offer custom granite, travertine, onyx, and marble countertops to homeowners and businesses since 2000. Give them a call today at 972-243-6097 or visit gagesgranite.com or on Facebook and Twitter. You can also stop by the main showroom located at 2427 Glenda Lane in Dallas. Gage's Granite, a proud sponsor of the Max Danielsen Show.
Hey guys, this is Jason with Lacrosse Monkey. Are you looking for a place to shop for your next athletic season? Monkey Sports is here to help. Whether you're looking for baseball, hockey, or lacrosse gear, if you can dream it, we've got it. We provide both the latest and best on the market equipment for your athlete. Stop by and visit us at 105 West Bethany Drive, right off of US 75 in Allen. Monkey Sports, a proud sponsor of the Max Danielsen Show.
And welcome back to the Max Danielsen Show. Where we left off, we were talking a little bit about the beginning of spring training for Major League Baseball, that whole Astros scandal. And then we went into the NBA All-Star Game and some other news around the NBA. So we're going to start it back off from this commercial break, going into the NFL, being the Baltimore Ravens releasing safety Tony Jefferson. Definitely an interesting one here. And even so, Jefferson was a really, really great safety in the NFL. But, the popular thing that we've seen here is the whole injury thing plaguing their career. In 2019, this past season, only played 5 games due to a torn ACL. And the biggest thing was that Jefferson was due $12 million this upcoming season. And the fact that Chuck Clark is becoming an really, really solid option for the Ravens. Unfortunately, it just had to happen. It was expected. They needed to get rid of that salary cap. They needed to get rid of the restraint that they have. And do I think that Tony Jefferson could be picked up very, very soon? Absolutely. I think he's a great safety option. When he's healthy, he's going to provide you a really, really solid defense and provide you that secondary support that you need whenever you're on the field. So we'll see where he goes. Do I think it's going to be to a top competitor? Probably not. I don't think a top competitor is going to take that risk, especially with the fact that he's coming back from a torn ACL. But maybe a lower team that could possibly want to take him. So we'll just have to see there. We'll have to see how that works for him. Going on now, of course, it was no surprise this guy was eventually going to be picked up. And it's really funny that Russell Wilson tweeted out something about Greg Olsen, like saying the GOAT, and then he's like, well, this tweet aged really well, and that is that the Seattle Seahawks decided to sign Greg Olsen. Honestly, this is a really, really solid pickup for the Seattle Seahawks. The one thing that we saw last season is when their number one tight end got injured, and I don't know why, but I cannot remember his name. The worst part was he was on my fantasy team last year. Will Dissly. I'm pretty sure that was their number one. I want to say that was their number one tight end. Let me make sure, though. I could be wrong, but I thought he was their number one tight end. Oh, great. Come see. I think it was Will Dissly. It was either Will Dissly or it was... No. Yeah. It was Will Dissly. So when he got injured last season, they were going through a ton of tight ends. And, of course, with Dissly coming back this year, this is going to be a really, really solid backup. It's going to allow Greg Olsen to still play. Dissly having that veteran leadership, of course, even though that Dissly... Oh, Lord, how old is Dissly? He looks old, but I think he's fairly young still. Yeah, he's only 23. Yeah, okay. That's how I remember. He played at Washington. Yeah, he just looks old, but especially being under the close eye of an amazing tight end, Greg Olsen, it's going to really, really help him develop. And I know that whenever he fully develops, even the fact that right now he's still a very, very solid tight end, I mean, he's just going to get even freaking better. So how that will play out for them, I think Dissly and Olsen are going to be getting a little bit off of equal amount of snaps. We'll have to see. I think Dissly's going to get a little more, or probably way more, but still Olsen's going to get some good quality reps in there. Going on to one that honestly, in my opinion, is 2 years too long, being the Washington Redskins cutting Jordan Reed. Don't get me wrong, Reed is a really, really solid tight end, but the problem with him, and again, I go back to this, injuries. That has been the problem with every single player. I mean, you talk about it, DeMarcus Cousins, Tony Jefferson. I mean, both of those guys their careers have just gone pretty much down since then, but none more than Jordan Reed. I mean, Jordan Reed, when he's healthy, is a very, very solid tight end. He really is. He has been inconsistent in the last couple of years. I will give you that. But it's also, you have to take into account, he's been injury prone forever since he's gotten into the league. Will he get picked up? That one is one that I don't know if a team really wants to take on, because knowing Jordan Reed, he's probably going to ask for a decent amount of money, and being the fact of his past in his resume of injuries, I don't see a team that wants to take that on. So could his career in the NFL be cut short at this point? Possibly, but we'll just have to see how that all works out. I hope that it doesn't, but at the same time, could this be the end for him? Maybe. And sadly, again, it's just because of injuries. Injuries have plagued his career, and it's really, really sad because he was, coming into the league, a very, very highly sought-after tight end, and even still, he was considered a very, very solid tight end. And then finally, actually the last two things we have for the NFL, being the Arizona Cardinals re-signing DJ Humphries to a 3-year, $45 million contract. For this contract, it's honestly pretty good. It's going to have $29 million guaranteed in it. He's a very, very young player, still only 26 years old, was the 24th overall pick in 2015. But honestly, he did play all 16 of his he played all 16 games for the first time last year. And he was about to become a pending free agent. So, honestly, this is something that probably the Cardinals needed to do. He's a great offensive tackle for them. And being a young team like the Cardinals are, especially why I say young, because you have Kyler Murray as your quarterback. We'll just have to see how that goes. But for the Cardinals, they need to do this, especially the fact that he's a piece that you can build around. And at this point, being the Cardinals, you just need some pieces. You just need some pieces to get by. But yeah, pretty decent signing for the Cardinals there. Pretty good re-signing. And then finally, of course, for the NFL, Drew Brees announced that he will return for 2020. I mean, what more is there to say about that? We get some more Drew Brees football. You know, we get to see this career still go on, this amazing, legendary career still go on. I mean, Drew Brees is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks, in my opinion, of all time. He has the arm, he has the IQ, he has the vision, he has everything, just not the height, you know? And even so, breaking the touchdown records last year of Peyton Manning. I mean, what a career he's had, and it's going to be still fun. I know Saints fans are pumped up that he's still going to be around for a year or possibly the next couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road. Then I think it'll be Drew's time. But we'll move on into college basketball. And this team, I swear, every single time I am reporting about college basketball, it is them being upset. And that is Duke. Number 6 Duke upset by NC State by the score of 88-66. This game was just an ugly game by Duke. Costly turnovers, just a solid game, though, by NC State. A very, very solid game. They were playing at their top-tier quality the entire game. And just Duke was – they started off to a slow start. We're almost coming back. And then NC State just put the nail in the coffin and just did not let them come back. I believe it was at the beginning of the second half that they were starting to come back. And NC State, you know, they just kept laying it on them. Costly turnovers by Duke, not converting when they needed to, just led to them being upset again. It'll be interesting come March Madness here within the next couple of weeks how they perform. I mean, they're still going to be a very, very high rank, especially with the team that they have and having Coach K. They always are a high rank. So how they fare for March Madness, that's something we're just going to have to see. You know, I think they'll be okay, but then again, anything's possible at this point. It's March Madness after all. And then finally, our very final topic of this podcast is going to be the NHL being the first thing that we have being the Washington Capitals acquiring Brendan Dillon in a trade. I want to say that he did come from the Sharks. And the one thing the Sharks haven't really been doing, they haven't really been doing much this year. They really haven't. On paper, they were supposed to be pretty good. And they're a mediocre team, but really haven't been performing the way they should be playing, especially when you have Carlson, Burns in your lineup, Evander Kane, and even so Brendan Dillon. But for the Capitals, pretty good, solid pickup. I know he was a big piece for when he was here in Dallas. Probably one of my favorite stars back then. This season, totaling 14 points, only 1 goal and 13 assists, and then, of course, the defensive presence he brings to a lineup, that's really going to help the Capitals, especially making a playoff run. Another defenseman that got traded this week was to the Golden Knights, being Alec Martinez from the Kings, who has been there for the entire span. For the Golden Knights, again, pretty solid pickup this year. Only 8 points, and only one of those being a goal. I mean, Martinez has been a very, very solid defender throughout his time in the NHL, and I know he's going to be a very big impact into the Golden Knights lines. So we'll just have to see how that plays out for the Golden Knights. But for the Capitals and Golden Knights, they upgraded the defensive position. Enough said there. Enough said. Moving on to the Vancouver Canucks getting Tyler Toffoli. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he also came from the Kings. Yeah. This season, he has 34 points, 18 goals for the Canucks. I swear, I've said a lot of teams are young teams. So the Canucks are no exception to that. They have a lot of young talent. They just got rid of the Sedin brothers, or did not get rid of them, but they retired last year. So they are now working with a fresh group of young guns and bringing this presence onto them, a guy who can get goals and a guy who can create point opportunities. That's going to be crucial for the Vancouver Canucks, especially in not only trying to make a playoff run this year, but into the future. Going on to the last thing of the NHL before we bring in one other thing, being the Tampa Bay Lightning acquiring Blake Coleman from the New Jersey Devils. This year, 31 points, 21 goals. I mean, this is, again, solid pickup for the Lightning. They only exchanged prospect Nolan Foote and the Canucks' first-round pick this year. And, of course, right now, Lightning are becoming a lock for the playoffs, so he's going to help them, especially help alongside Steven Stamkos. Maybe he can finally get himself a Stanley Cup. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see how that all works out. But for the Lightning, I mean, the Lightning, Canucks, Golden Knights, and Capitals all made very solid moves coming into the trade deadline. I believe it was the trade deadline at least. It only makes sense that it was probably the trade deadline. I imagine it was. Yeah, I think it was the trade deadline. I'm not going to lie. But I will make sure and check that it was. I don't know why I am having a brain fart right now that if it wasn't. No, it's actually on Monday. So interesting that there were so many trades going on this week. Usually all those happen on Monday, but oh well. You know, props to the teams for getting it done very early. And then the very final thing to end off this podcast. As you know, today is February 22nd, and with it being February 22nd, we're going to take the clock back just about 40 years ago. And today, I believe it was today or yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me make sure. Yeah, today, February 22nd, is when the United States beat the Soviet Union at Lake Placid and became the Miracle on Ice. The team that couldn't and really was a very, very big thing back then, of course. For those of you who don't really know the story, back then in the Olympics, teams could only use college athletes for their teams, but of course no other team followed that rule besides the United States. And, of course, you had the big powerhouses of Canada, the Soviet Union. And when it was all said and done, when the United States had to face the Soviet Union, they were the underdogs in that story and came out on top, winning that game. And that is where, if I'm not mistaken, that is where the USA chant came from. Yeah, it was from where that USA, USA, USA chant came from. And I mean, if you are watching this podcast still, listening to it, why not go watch Miracle on Ice tonight? Why not go watch that movie? It's a great movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. One of my favorite hockey movies besides, of course, The Mighty Ducks. If you don't like The Mighty Ducks, you're insane. Unless you've seen it like 100 times. Then I see your point. But, yeah, but it's awesome the fact to reminisce about that. Yesterday, it was buy one, get one free at Chipotle if you wore a hockey jersey. But unfortunately, the Chipotle that they had over here in Sherman decided to have a gas leak, and they had nothing. So there was that. Very, very, very bad luck on my end. But, oh well, can't really complain, you know. Would have loved to have some Chipotle for a week, but oh well, maybe next time, maybe the next 10 years, who knows. Well, I think that is going to do it for today's podcast, as I thank you from myself, Max Danielsen, and as always, have a pleasant good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever or whenever you may be watching. Thanks, y'all, and we'll see you next week.